Hello, I'm Doran Ellen Bildotan in Svat, and after an imposed period of silence due to flu, I'm doing a twofer tonight. So I did a video in Hebrew and I'll do one in English. I have joined both Truth Social and Blue Sky, and after seeing some of the political stuff on Blue Sky, I was able to curate my home feed, whatever they call it, as such that I'm only seeing science posts now, which is the way I like it. But in the beginning, I was seeing all the political stuff, and then I would go over to Truth Social, and I would see the right-wing counterparts of the left-wing people saying approximately the same things about the right that the left was saying. It is not a fruitful practice to think that because we can see the fault in another, that we are morally superior to them. In fact, it actually works that the people that are the most disturbed by other people's immorality and foibles and failings and corruption, what have you, are people who have their own things to deal with, and looking at other people's slip-ups provides a welcome relief from the responsibility of dealing with our own problems. But in the long run, it doesn't work. In the long run, the best way to weed corruption out of the world is to weed it out of our own hearts. Here in Israel, the situation is so painful. And thank God some of the hostages are returning. Certainly not an ideal deal. Had the Jews been learning Torah correctly, it never would have happened. We absolutely must get to a point where we are self-aware enough, in touch enough with our subconscious, in subconscious, that we know how to create our worlds. We absolutely must, because the alternative to not doing so, as hard as that work is far worse than what it takes from us to gain mastery over ourselves. Planet Earth is highly unstable. We're at solar maximum. There's a polar shift. In one part of the world there are floods, in one part of the world there are fires. Now in California they have both fire and water. Europe has been being blasted by terrible storms, unprecedented storms. Other parts of the world as well. the situation is critical. And no amount of complaining about what someone else is doing is going to avail us anything. We have to get our own minds and emotions under control. And when we do, we create peace around ourselves. It is not okay to say, okay, I saved myself, I'm all right. I can make peace for me. At that point, we have to then reach out to others who, unbeknownst to them, are creating their own suffering, and let them know that they're creating their own suffering, or try to, and urge them to begin the practices of self-control that lead to peace. One of the hardest things for us to do is to admit that we are the victims of our own uncontrolled subconscious. It is a very, very difficult thing to admit. Everyone wants to believe that someone else did something to us. And on a certain level, that is true. But we have to know how to create the other in a peaceful and loving and secure kind of a way. If our creative abilities, our subconscious imagining faculty is out of control, it will necessarily create bad things that are, thank God, at least temporary. The reason why bad things happen to people whose emotions and imagining facilities are out of control is because they have not worked on themselves enough to be able to do it in an intentional, positive kind of a way. So the things that come out of their consciousness are bad things and bad people and bad situations and even bad weather. There are a number of traditions in the world that have meditative practices which teach us to get our minds and our emotions under control, to look in deeply, and to be able to create worlds that are habitable. There's a Buddhist tradition. There is the Stoic tradition. I'm sure there are others which I'm not familiar with, but they exist. And if one doesn't, if one is not in a Torah tradition, and I'm talking a real Torah tradition, I'm not talking about a Babylonian heresy, I'm talking about real Torah tradition, then one has to find the tradition that works for them. To be living in a world in which societies are so radically polarized that the center of gravity of the planet is changing, that people are seeing that the northern light, the northern star, which has been their compass for so long, is starting to waver, is starting to flicker. Wow. Wow. The thought of Earth being without a northern compass is terrifying. In Hebrew, north is tzafon. And it is also related to the Hebrew word for conscience, which is matzpon. The fact that the northern star is starting to flicker, and there are scientists who are concerned that it might go supernova, is absolutely terrifying. It means that many, many people on Earth are on the verge of having no moral compass whatsoever. Wow. On the other hand, that northern light has not been sufficient, has it? So this is also an opportunity to gauge our point of moral reference, to engineer our moral compass ourselves. I am frankly very, very worried on many, many levels. The earthquakes that are happening, the floods, the fires, what is happening in California is, there are no words for it. Here in Israel, there's so much pain. And it's all because people are not looking within and finding the very core of their being. Everyone is blaming someone else. The right blames the left blames the right. The Jews blame the anti-Semites blame the Jews. People are blaming the global warming, which of course is somebody's fault. It's always someone else and someone else. That is not a productive way of thinking. Even if someone else or something else is the proximate cause of our trouble, and that most certainly is the case. These things really do exist, yeah? They're not ultimately existent, thank God, but they do exist. So they are proximate causes. It's not an illusion to say that so-and-so is causing trouble. This and that is causing trouble. That's right, but it's not the ultimate cause. And it's the ultimate cause that we have to get to. And when we find the center of our consciousness, we find the center of all consciousness. Excuse me. There's something that I'm seeing that I find amazing. I mentioned that on Blue Sky I've curated my homepage, whatever you call it. I'm not up with the lingo, I'm sorry. To see most of the science things. I'm seeing tremendous promise in science. When I was young, science was very materialistic and very reductionist. You know, we were worth like 36 cents worth of chemicals or whatever it was. And they were 100% sure that they were going to figure everything out about DNA and about consciousness, and they would gain total control. And the whole thrust of doing the science was to gain control, yeah, to gain a military advantage over another country. As a result of venturing into space, which is one and the same as venturing into one's consciousness, going into inner space and outer space are exactly the same thing. Scientists are beginning to understand that indeed the cosmos is conscious. And they are beginning to understand that the way in which we regard things contributes to how they present themselves to us. So there's a lot more respect now for nature, for the universe, and then, as Carl Sagan said, we're made of star stuff. So if the stars are conscious, and if they are made of conscious material, and if everything in the universe is perfectly balanced, and one phenomenon cannot exist without another phenomenon precisely the way it is, then that must necessarily be true about who we are as well. So, interestingly, what I'm seeing is that the scientists are becoming more awe-inspired than most people in religions. Very interesting thing is happening. Scientists are beginning to understand that the creation is sacred, that things cannot be just as they are in perfect balance without something amazing going on. And so they are beginning to have far more respect than they once did. And people are thinking more in terms of, wow, isn't it amazing that our bodies are constituted from the compounds that, well, I guess the elements that are created by supernovae far away. So the 36 cents worth of chemicals that our body is made of is actually pretty awesome stuff. Interestingly, the most promising change in consciousness that I'm seeing is among the scientists. Now, on some level, they are stuck, and there's a problem of publish or perish, and maybe quantum theory and relativity hasn't developed as much as we might like, or dovetailed as much as we would like. So, of course, there are fits and starts in science as well. But the change in thinking, the realization of the exquisite balance that everything is dependent upon everything else, is an awe-inspired way of thinking. I'm very, very grateful for that development. The message that I would like to conclude with here and now is the following. And I know you're not going to like this. I know you would like me to tell you it's because of the Republicans, it's because of the Democrats, it's because of the Zionists, it's because of the Nazis. It's because of you. The ultimate source of whatever assails you, of whatever vexes you, of whatever causes you problems, of whatever causes you chaos, is your own consciousness. Governments are the reification of our own uncontrolled subconscious. That is why there can never be a good government. The best of governments are bad. If we are living under any kind of government whatsoever, it means that we are not in control of our subconscious, and we are reifying and projecting that within us which is not reconciled. When I say control, I don't mean heavy-handed control. I mean reconciled, made peace with, and we'll project it out there. And so it will necessarily rule over us and try to subject us outwardly, even as it does inwardly. It doesn't make any sense to flail at the projections, at the shadows. We have to address that which is causing the shadows and get to the source of light behind it. And then we can control what is being projected. Thank you for listening.